Okay, so coming up in about a week, my parents, who are 91, it's their 70th wedding anniversary.
Nice.
70 years married. And I really can't imagine there's a single day in that 70 years that they haven't ended the day holding hands. They always hold hands. So I thought it would be cool for us to say, happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Watts. Okay? So I'm going to hold it up, get us all in there. And then after that, I'm just going to set it over here and let them watch me teach Sunday school. Because, that's kind of a thing they like. All right? Okay, so here we go. On three, happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Watts. 1, 2, 3. Happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Watts. Woohoo! All right. Okay, I just said that right there, and about halfway through, it'll tumble over. Okay. Y'all mind if I close these doors?
No.
I watched a scary movie the other night. Here we go. You know, the last time I shared about how fascinated I was with rivers. I went and did this whole thing about how crazy I am about rivers. Driving down the road and I see a river, everything goes into slow motion. There's some other things I'm fascinated with. One of them is trees. I'm doing a little study, a private Bible study kind of thing about trees because, the Bible starts with a tree in the Garden of Eden. It ends with a tree in the New Jerusalem. There's a tree planted there for the leaves are for the healing of the nations. I don't understand that. And the tree, if you're righteous, you're like a tree planted by streams of water. So that's another thing I'm fascinated by. So I'm driving down the road, looking at trees instead of looking at the road. Another thing I'm fascinated by, stars. Just recently we were in the mountains, and where we had a cabin that was kind of out away from everything, and no lights of cities and stuff. We would go out on the deck and just look up at the stars. We could see the Milky Way. We could see they were just so dazzling and bright. And I've been fascinated by them because of, how Abraham said, God said to Abraham, look at the stars, Abraham, and believe I am. And there's that scripture, this is just like a preview of coming Sunday school lessons. We are to become, I don't have the reference, we are to become blameless and pure children of God in a warped and crooked generation. We are to shine like the stars. So sometimes I meditate on that. A couple other people things that I get fascinated with are people who are pastoral, who have that shepherding heart. You can think of people who just love you. They have cared about you. They have tended to your needs like you're a sheep and they're the shepherd. And some pastors are like that. I've known my dad. My dad, one of the greatest shepherds I've ever known, as he pastored his flock. I can remember a time that just impacted me deeply where this little old man was walking to the grocery store with his cane, his hat on, to get some milk and take it back to his wife in their little house in this community. It was in Jonesboro. And the poor guy got hit by a car. And a church member owned a store right where it happened, and he immediately called my dad, the pastor. And my dad got there before the ambulance got there before the police got there. And I rode along with him. And there I am, standing off to the side of the crowd, and my dad is down on his knees, just speaking to this guy who's been hit by a car. He was an old guy. And then after he was taken off to the hospital, he died. And I went with my dad as my dad went to tell his now widow. And I just remember watching my dad walk in with the old guy's hat and cane. And I was just stunned by how beautiful that was. Excuse me. The beauty of someone who's pastoral. But today I want to talk about the beauty of deacons. Your dad was a deacon emeritus. He'd been a deacon for a long time, and he's one of the first deacons here, as I understand it, right? And I was asking a couple of the guys there, and so what was his role now? He was doing all the work of the deacon, that he was the deacon emeritus. But our scripture that we're in this week is Timothy. in Timothy chapter 2 through, I don't know, Maggie knows. And so as we hit Maggie's the most faithful in our home of doing the church Bible reading. She's in it every morning, reading the scriptures, and I'm so envious of that in her. I was reading at the beginning of my book of Timothy in here, and they give a little description, a preface to the book of Timothy, and the guy says, Timothy is a shy young pastor with stomach problems. And he says shy because you know that scripture, God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power and love and a strong mind, right? And so this guy conjectured, well, maybe Timothy was just real timid and shy and introvert, like I've been my whole life. And also he had stomach problems because there's that scripture where he says, stop drinking so much water, Timothy. Try a little wine for your stomach problems and frequent illnesses. So that, this guy just summed up Timothy like that. But Timothy, the book of Timothy, 1 Timothy in particular, is a manual for how to run a church, for actually how a young pastor with stomach problems can run this new church that has been established. And it's some beautiful, nuts and bolts things about how to work with people in the church. Timothy grows to become, as you read Paul's letters, he becomes like Paul's aide de camp. Paul is he is mentored by Paul, and he becomes his faithful aide and traveling companion. Whenever I think of Timothy, the book of Timothy, I think of this little chorus that I used to lead when I was a teenager. And the first time I heard it was at UNC. You go to UNC? Yeah, the InterVarsity group up there did this song. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. To be an example to believers in speech, in life, in faith, in hope, in purity and love. So that was something Paul spoke to Timothy. Timothy, you're a young pastor. Don't let anyone look down on your youthfulness, but be an example. Let's sing it again. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. Be an example to believers in speech, in life, in faith, in hope, in purity and love. Yay. I love that song. Whenever I come to the book of Timothy, I think about leading that song years ago. Just a quick funny story. I was 18 years old, and my friend Greg was like a freshman at UNC, and our band went up there to play a concert in the dorm, and I was on the drums. And I just so stupid. I go on the campus of UNC wearing a bright red jacket.
Oh my God.
Steak, right? And I'm just walking in with my drum stuff, and these two guys come running out, and they're going to beat me up, and they just laugh. I'm like, wow. It's kind of scary. Yeah. So let's see. As I was reading the scriptures for this week, I hit 1 Timothy chapter 3, and it just stopped me. Here's that beautiful passage about deacons. So I've just been soaking in that this week, and I wanted to read that. Mel, you keep me track on the time because my camera's running over there. I don't have a thought.